I got into my husband's car and found something strange in the glove compartment. A small velvet pouch, the kind jewelers use for delicate things. My heart skipped. For a second, I thought maybe it was a surprise for me. Our anniversary was coming up, and though Julian had grown distant, some naive part of me still hoped he remembered. But when I opened the pouch, there wasn't jewelry inside, there was a small silver key. Attached to a tag that said room 214, my fingers went cold. A hotel room key. I didn't say a word. I just stared at it, feeling my stomach twist like a wet towel being wrung dry. Then, calmly, with a stillness that surprised even me, I reached into the drawer beside the kitchen sink, took out a near-identical key tag from an old motel trip years ago and replaced it. But instead of the real key, I slipped in a tiny USB flash drive, one loaded with a surprise of my own. And what happened after that? Well, let's just say the explosion wasn't just emotional. It made our entire neighborhood talk for weeks. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. It helps me tell more stories like this one. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of betrayal and payback travels. I sat back at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The silence in the house was thick, not peaceful, but suffocating. The kind of silence that hums in your ears and forces you to hear your own heartbeat. The clock on the wall ticked with cruel precision, every second echoing the rhythm of my disappointment. Julian wasn't home yet. He had texted me earlier, late meeting tonight. Don't wait up, late meeting. How many of those had there been lately? I'd stopped counting after the fourth when he finally walked in past midnight. His tie was loose. His hair a mess, not the kind of mess that comes from stress, but from someone's hands. I could smell the faint trace of perfume clinging to his shirt. Not mine, something too sweet, too young. He tossed his jacket on the chair like always, gave me a tired smile that didn't reach his eyes, and mumbled something about being exhausted. I said nothing. Just watched him. The man I'd built my life around, now looking more like a stranger in my own home. As he disappeared into the shower, I looked at the car keys on the counter, the same key ring that once symbolized our shared life, our trust. Now, it held the key to his lie, and the beginning of my revenge. The next morning, I acted as if nothing had changed. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, black coffee. The usual. Julian scrolled through his phone, distracted, while I watched him from across the table, memorizing every twitch, every glance, every careless word. You're quiet today, he said finally. Just tired, I replied with a small smile. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't care enough to ask further. When he left for work, I waited 15 minutes before grabbing my purse and following him out. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from something darker, anticipation. I tailed his car down Main Street, keeping a safe distance. He wasn't heading to the office. I knew those turns too well. No, he was driving toward the highway, toward the cluster of motels near the old shopping plaza. And when he finally pulled into the parking lot of Sunrise Suites, my heart clenched. Room to one for. He parked, checked his reflection in the mirror, straightened his tie, and walked in with that familiar air of confidence. The same confidence that had once charmed me and now disgusted me. I parked a block away and waited. The sun was high, heat waves rising from the asphalt, but I felt nothing but ice inside me. My hands trembled slightly as I reached into my bag, feeling the small remote for the flash drive I'd planted. One press, and it would activate. You see, the drive wasn't just a piece of plastic. It was connected to a small charge, nothing deadly, just enough to make a scene. To expose him. To burn away the lies, quite literally. In our past. Then too. My phone buzzed with a message from him. Busy day, love. Don't wait for me. I almost laughed. The audacity. When he finally came out, he wasn't alone. A woman followed, young, blonde, maybe late 20s. She was giggling, her hand brushing his arm like they were high school sweethearts. I watched them walk to the car. They got in. He reached for the glove box, probably looking for that key again. Unaware I'd replaced it, that's when I pressed the button. There was a loud pop, followed by a burst of smoke curling up from the glove compartment. Nothing dangerous, but enough to cause chaos. The woman screamed. Julian jumped out of the car, cursing, waving his hand through the smoke. People came running. And within minutes, someone called the fire department. As the sirens grew louder in the distance, I sat in my own car, hidden behind a tinted window, watching. My lips curved into the faintest smile. Because sometimes the truth doesn't just come out. Sometimes it explodes. The video ended. But the silence that followed was louder than any sound I had ever heard. For a long moment, I just sat there staring at the dark reflection on my phone screen. My fingers were trembling, my breathing shallow, as if my body had forgotten how to function. I could still hear Julian's laugh echoing faintly through my earbuds, that deep, warm laugh I once loved, now forever tainted by the sight of him leaning toward her. My daughter-in-law, Allison. I took off the headphones slowly, my heart pounding so hard that the world seemed to pulse with it. My eyes burned, but no tears came. It was like my emotions had frozen mid-air, waiting for permission to fall. The bakery smelled faintly of sugar and bread, scents that had once brought me comfort. But now they made me nauseous. I whispered into the empty room, barely recognizing my own voice. How could you? The clock on the wall struck to 07 a.m. Each tick sounded like a countdown, not to disaster, but to transformation. Because something inside me was breaking apart, reshaping itself into something colder, sharper. When morning came, I hadn't slept at all. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd spent decades serving breakfast to the man who had just destroyed me. The sunlight came through the window in thin slashes, cutting across the room like blades. I felt hollow but strangely alert, like every nerve in my body had been rewired. The sound of Julian's footsteps upstairs pulled me back into the moment. He hummed as he came down the stairs, a tune I didn't recognize, light and casual. As if he hadn't spent the previous night holding another woman's hand, he looked freshly shaved, his shirt ironed crisp, his silver watch glinting on his wrist. He smiled at me, the same polite, empty smile he had perfected over the years. Morning, he said, pouring himself coffee. You're up early. I watched him closely, memorizing every movement, every lie. Couldn't sleep, I replied softly, forcing my voice not to shake. He took a sip, sighed. I'll be working late tonight. Big client meeting, I smiled, just barely. Of course. He didn't notice the way my hand gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. He didn't notice anything anymore. Or maybe he just didn't care to. When he finally left, the echo of the front door closing felt like the final nail sealing a coffin. The mask I'd been wearing, the quiet, obedient wife, slipped off completely. I picked up my phone and opened the message Thomas had sent overnight. He's meeting her again today. Same place. 5 p.m. My throat tightened, but this time not from sadness. The pain had burned away, leaving something colder in its place, precision. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back with steady hands, thank you. I'll handle it from here. The decision came to me as naturally as breathing. I didn't plan it. I didn't even have to think about it. It was as if my body had been waiting for this moment all along. At noon, I drove into town. The sun was bright, but everything looked gray, drained of color. I parked near the pharmacy and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my palms hurt. Then I walked inside, my voice calm, my face expressionless. I need industrial glue. I told the clerk. Something strong. He asked what for. I smiled faintly. Just fixing something that broke. When I got home, I set the small brown bag on the counter. The hum of the refrigerator filled the room. I looked around the house, the framed photos, the flowers on the table, the faint marks of a life built on habit. All of it suddenly felt like someone else's story. In the garage, Julian's car waited. The same car that hid his lies. I ran my hand along the side mirror, then slowly opened the glove box. The faint scent of perfume, her perfume, still lingered there. I felt a shiver run down my spine. And then I smiled. It wasn't joy. It wasn't relief. It was the smile of a woman who had stopped being afraid. I took a deep breath and whispered, "You kept your secret here, Julian. Now, I'll leave mine." As the day faded into dusk, I stood by the window watching the sky turn red. My phone buzzed once. Thomas again. He's there. She's there. Same table. I typed only 2 words in reply. Let it burn. And as night fell, I finally felt it, the first flicker of peace in months. Not because justice had been served yet, but because I finally knew how it would be. Tomorrow, he would open that glove box again, and the truth would explode. The next morning began with a deceptive calm. Birds chirped outside, the kind of bright, ordinary morning that mocked the storm inside me. I sat by the kitchen window, tracing the rim of my coffee cup with my finger, my mind far away. I had slept only in fragments, flashes of Julian's laughter with her, of the video replaying behind my eyelids. The cup felt heavy, almost foreign in my hands. It was the same cup I had bought him for our 25th anniversary. A gift meant to remind him of us. Now it just reminded me of what I had lost. I heard his footsteps again, steady, predictable. A metronome of lies. He came down the stairs adjusting his tie, his cologne clouding the air. I used to love that scent. It used to mean safety, comfort, love. Now it smelled like betrayal. He looked at me briefly and smiled, that same easy, practiced smile. You're up early again, he said, pouring himself coffee. You've been restless lately. Everything okay? I looked up from the cup, meeting his eyes for the first time. I'm fine, I said evenly. Just been thinking a lot, he chuckled softly. You always overthink, Juliet. That's your problem. The words hit me harder than he could ever imagine. My problem. For 40 years, my problem had been believing him, loving him, trusting him. He glanced at his watch, picked up his briefcase, and headed toward the door. Don't wait up, he said. It might be another late night. I smiled faintly. Of course. Be careful, the door shut. His car engine roared to life. And that's when I moved. I grabbed the small bottle from under the sink. The industrial superglue I'd bought the day before. The warning label read permanent, irreversible. I stared at those words for a long time before unscrewing the cap. The sharp, chemical smell filled the garage instantly. My hands didn't shake this time. I was steady, controlled, every move precise. I opened the glove box. There it was, the small, unassuming tube of lubricant, tucked away like a secret. I picked it up carefully, my fingers brushing the label. It looked so harmless, so ordinary. But it had become a symbol of everything that had gone wrong in my life, without hesitation. I poured the thick, transparent glue into the empty lubricant tube, filled it almost to the top, and wiped the edges clean. Then I pressed the cap back on exactly as it had been. My movements were deliberate, calm. When I was done, I placed it back in the same spot. The glove box snapping shut with a soft click that sounded final, like the closing of a door that would never reopen. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the silence. This isn't revenge, I whispered to myself. This is truth finding its way out. When I stepped back into the kitchen, I realized how bright the morning had become. The light cut across the floor, warm and golden, as if the universe itself was unaware of what was about to happen. I picked up the dishcloth and began wiping the counters, the simple domestic act strangely soothing. I felt almost free. The hours crawled by. I baked a fresh batch of cinnamon rolls for the shop, answered a few calls, smiled at neighbors who had no idea the quiet woman next door had set a storm in motion. Time passed in fragments until my phone buzzed, a message from Thomas. They just left the restaurant, heading to the motel off Route 23. My heart didn't race this time. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes when you already know the ending. I walked to the window and saw Julian's car drive past the corner. The same car I had touched only hours ago. The same car that held his secret. I whispered under my breath. Drive safely, Julian. Then I turned off my phone. 2 hours later, I was at the bakery, helping a customer pick out a cake when the sirens began. Faint at first, then louder, echoing through the streets. A strange unease prickled at the back of my neck. I looked out the window. 2 fire trucks sped past, lights flashing, followed by an ambulance. They were heading in the direction of Route 23. The woman beside me frowned. Oh dear, looks serious, she said. I hope everyone's okay. I nodded slowly. Me too, but inside, my heart was pounding, not with fear, but with something darker. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Miller. Her voice trembled with a mix of shock and gossip. Juliet, did you hear? There was an incident at the motel near Route 23. They say a couple got stuck, literally stuck together. The firefighters had to separate them. I closed my eyes. My lips parted slightly, a breath escaping, half a gasp, half a laugh that never quite made it out. Oh my God, she continued breathlessly. Can you imagine? They said it was so embarrassing, the police had to get involved. The poor woman fainted. I heard the man's name was Julian Roberts, I whispered. There was a stunned pause on the other end. Wait, Juliet, but I had already ended the call. The bakery was suddenly too quiet. I looked down at my hands, flour-dusted, trembling slightly. I picked up a cinnamon roll from the tray, warm and golden, and smiled faintly. It was done. The truth had exploded in the most literal way possible for the first time in months. I felt light. Not happy, not exactly free, but finished. Like a story that had reached its last line. I cleaned the counter, wiped my hands, and looked straight into the security camera above the register. If you're watching this video, I said softly, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Because this, I smiled faintly, is just the beginning. Asterisk, the news spread faster than smoke. By evening, the story was everywhere, whispered in the bakery, murmured at the grocery store, and shared in hushed tones across our small town. A married man and a younger woman caught in an unusual accident at a local motel. Firefighters had to separate them. They didn't mention names, of course. But in a town like ours, secrets don't stay buried for long. By nightfall, everyone knew. I closed the bakery early. The air outside was heavy, humid, a storm waiting to happen. As I locked the door, my hands trembled slightly, not from guilt, but from the rush of adrenaline still running through me. It was done. What started in a glove box had ended in a blaze of humiliation when I reached home. The answering machine was blinking. One message. I pressed play. Juliet. His voice was hoarse, strained. I need you to come, please. I'm at St. Mary's Hospital. A shaky breath. Please just come. Then silence. I stood there frozen. My heart beat once, twice, then settled into a slow, steady rhythm. I should have felt pity. Maybe regret. But there was nothing. Just a deep, quiet emptiness. Still, after 40 years of habit, muscle memory took over. I grabbed my keys and drove. The hospital lights glared too brightly, white and sterile. I walked through the halls, my heels echoing on the tile floor. Nurses moved quickly, their faces blank with routine. But every now and then, I caught one glancing at me, a flicker of recognition. A whisper behind polite professionalism, room 214, his name was on the chart. I pushed open the door slowly. The smell of antiseptic hit me first, then the sight of him, Julian, lying in the bed. Pale and sweating, his hand bandaged, his face drawn with pain and something else. Shame. Beside him sat Allison, her eyes red and swollen. She looked up at me and froze. Her face twisted with panic, confusion, guilt, all tangled together. Juliet, Julian rasped. His voice barely a whisper. It was an accident. I stood by the door, calm, composed. My voice was even. Was it? Allison lowered her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. Julian tried to sit up, grimacing in pain. Please listen, I didn't mean for. I stepped closer, cutting him off with a quiet, measured tone. You didn't mean to lie for years? To cheat, to betray your own son's wife? Allison sobbed harder, her shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. The sound of her crying filled the room, a pathetic melody that should have moved me, but it didn't. I looked at her, at both of them, and felt nothing. Not hate, not love. Just clarity. Julian's voice cracked. Juliet, please. You have to believe me. I tilted my head slightly, studying him like a stranger. Believe you? After everything? I let out a soft laugh, quiet and sharp. You used to say I was too trusting, remember? Maybe you were right. But I'm learning. He reached out a trembling hand. Juliet, please. I stepped back, out of his reach. You don't get to ask me for anything anymore. The room went silent except for the beeping of the monitor. For a long moment, I just stood there watching him. This man who had once been my entire world, now reduced to a broken shell. Exposed under hospital lights. Finally, I spoke, my voice soft but cutting. You know what the worst part is, Julian? I used to pray that you'd never hurt me. But now that you have, I'm thankful. Because you showed me who you really are. And now, I'm free. I turned toward the door. Allison reached out weakly. Please, Juliet. I stopped, my hand on the handle, and looked back at her. Her mascara was smeared, her lips trembling. You destroyed your marriage, I said quietly. You destroyed mine. And for what? A secret in a glove box? Her lips parted, but no sound came. I stepped out into the hallway. The door closed behind me with a soft click, the kind of sound that ends something forever. Outside, the night had finally broken. Rain poured in heavy sheets, washing the world clean. I walked to my car slowly, the hospital lights fading behind me. As I sat in the driver's seat, I finally allowed myself a single, deep breath. For the first time in years, it didn't hurt to breathe. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. My reflection stared back, tired eyes, tear-streaked cheeks, but something new in them, strength. I pressed record. I'm so glad you're still here, I said softly, looking straight into the lens. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe. And tell me where you're listening from because I want to know how far my story has traveled. My story of love, betrayal. And the moment I finally stopped being afraid, I smiled faintly. Sometimes revenge isn't fire or fury. Sometimes it's silence. And walking away, I ended the recording and sat there for a long moment, listening to the rain. And for the first time in 40 years, I didn't feel alone. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the storm hadn't. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Dozens of notifications lit up the screen, comments, messages, missed calls. I blinked in confusion. Then opened my social media app. And there it was, the video I had posted. The quiet confession I thought only a few friends would see had exploded overnight. Thousands of views. Hundreds of comments. This woman is a legend. You handled betrayal with more class than I ever could. Tell us more, Juliet. We're listening. My hands trembled as I scrolled. People from around the world, women, men, even teenagers, were sharing my video. Stitching it. Quoting it. Hashtag Glovebox was trending. Someone had even made a meme of me, that moment where I said, sometimes revenge isn't fire or fury. Turned into a viral quote, set against cinematic music. I sat there in silence, stunned. I hadn't meant to start a movement. But somehow, I had. By noon, reporters were calling. Talk shows wanted interviews. Strangers were sending flowers to the bakery with handwritten notes. You gave me the courage to leave, and yet, I couldn't smile. Because beneath the noise, something inside me felt strangely hollow. Around 3 p.m., my phone rang again. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello, a pause. Then a familiar, trembling voice, Juliet. It's me. Double quotes, Julian. My pulse quickened, but my voice stayed calm. You shouldn't be calling me. I had to, he said weakly. You ruined me. I stayed silent. You think you won? You didn't, he continued, his tone cracking. The company fired me. Allison left. Everyone's talking about me like I'm a monster. You destroyed my life. I took a slow breath. You destroyed it yourself, Julian. I just stopped protecting you from the truth. He let out a bitter laugh. You think the world loves you now. But wait, fame doesn't care who you are. They'll turn on you next. The line went dead for a long time. I just sat there. Phone still in my hand. Maybe he was right. Maybe the world's love was as fragile as its hate. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of comments, notifications, applause, and somewhere beneath it all, Julian's voice echoing in the dark. I opened my laptop and stared at the video again. My own face looked back at me, calm, collected, righteous. But behind that calm, I could now see it. The faint flicker of pain I hadn't noticed before. Had I really moved on? Or had I just built a prettier cage? The next morning, when I arrived at the bakery, a young woman was waiting outside. She looked barely 20, nervous, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. Are you Juliet? She asked softly. I nodded. She showed me her screen. My video paused mid-sentence. You don't know what this meant to me, she whispered. I was in something terrible. Your story helped me leave. Her eyes filled with tears. You saved me. Something inside me broke. Gently, I took her hand. No, I said quietly. You saved yourself. As she walked away, I stood there for a long moment. The morning sun warming my face. Maybe I hadn't found peace yet. But maybe I had found purpose. Later that day, as I was closing up, I saw an envelope slipped under the door. No name, just my initials written in shaky handwriting. I opened it carefully. Inside was a short note. Juliet, you were right. I lied. I hurt you. I destroyed everything good in my life. But I need you to know. I never stopped loving you. Julian, for a moment, my heart clenched. Then, without hesitation, I folded the note back and placed it in the trash bin behind the counter. Some truths don't need to be held onto. I walked outside and looked at the sunset. Orange light spilling over the quiet streets. My life had fallen apart, but something beautiful had begun to rise from the pieces. I opened my phone again, started recording a new video. My voice was softer this time, steadier. Thank you for listening to my story, I said, looking straight into the camera. If you're going through something painful, remember this, revenge might feel like victory. But healing, that's the real freedom. Subscribe if you believe in second chances, I smiled gently. And maybe one day, I'll tell you what happened next. The camera blinked red, then stopped recording. Outside, the wind carried the scent of fresh bread and rain. And for the first time in a long time, Juliet knew she was finally writing her own ending. Asterisk, it had been 3 weeks since the storm. The storm that began in my heart and ended on everyone's screen. The bakery was busier than ever. New customers came every day, drawn not just by the smell of warm bread, but by curiosity to see the woman who caught her husband and spoke her truth. But I had stopped talking about it. Fame had become noise, and I'd learned to let silence be my peace. One evening, as the sun sank behind the horizon, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the last streaks of gold fade into blue. That's when I saw it, a familiar car slowing down outside, Julian's car. For a moment, my breath caught. He stepped out slowly, looking older, smaller somehow. His once confident stride replaced by hesitation. He stood on the sidewalk, not daring to approach the door. I didn't move either. We just looked at each other through the glass, two ghosts from the same broken story. After a moment, he placed something on the bench outside the bakery, a small brown envelope. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the evening light. I waited until he was gone before stepping out. Inside the envelope was a key. The key to our old lake house and a folded piece of paper. Juliet, I've sold everything. The company, the house. I'm leaving town tomorrow. There's something in the lake house for you. One last truth. You deserve that much. J. My hands trembled slightly, but I knew I had to go. Not for him. For closure. The next morning, I drove to the lake. The road was quiet, the air cool and heavy with fog. That house had once been our retreat, the place we dreamed of growing old together. Now it looked like a memory left out in the rain, peeling paint. Dusty windows, wild vines climbing the porch. I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. On the dining table sat a single photo frame and a sealed box. The photo was old. The two of us in our 20s, laughing, flour on our faces, standing in the first bakery we ever opened. Inside the box were handwritten pages. Dozens of them, letters. Each one dated through the years. Letters Julian had written but never sent. You were right, I'm scared. Not of losing you, but of being ordinary. I don't know when I stopped seeing you and started seeing only myself. Every night I tell myself I'll confess. And every morning I lie again. If you ever find these, I hope you know, I did love you. Just not the way you deserved. Tears slipped down my cheeks, soft and silent. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. Just a deep, aching sadness for the years lost to pride. For two people who forgot how to speak before it was too late, I gathered the letters carefully, tied them back with the old ribbon they came with, and placed them in the fireplace. I lit a match. The flames rose slowly, curling the paper into glowing ash. The words that had chained me for so long were turning to smoke, disappearing into the open air. I whispered softly, "Goodbye, Julian." When the fire went out, I walked outside. The lake shimmered under the morning sun, calm and endless, and for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Back in town, I filmed one last video. No dramatic music. No filters. Just me, sitting by the window, a quiet smile on my face. Sometimes, I said softly, closure isn't about revenge or even forgiveness. It's about understanding that love, even when it ends, can still teach you who you are. I looked straight into the camera. If you're watching this, I hope you let go of what hurts and hold on to what heals. Because pain fades. But peace stays. I ended the recording, saved it, and didn't post it right away. Some stories, I realized, don't belong to the world. Some stories are just for the soul. That night, as the moonlight touched the quiet streets, I locked the bakery, took one last look at the stars, and whispered to myself, Juliet Roberts, widow, baker, survivor, and finally, free. They say revenge burns hot. But peace burns slow. I once thought exposing the truth would fix everything. That if he felt the pain I felt, somehow, I'd heal. But healing isn't about making someone else hurt. It's about walking away without needing to look back. I lost a husband. I lost 40 years of what I thought was love. But I found something else, something I'd forgotten, myself. Now, when I bake in the quiet of the morning and the smell of fresh bread fills the air, I don't think of betrayal anymore. I think of beginnings, because some endings are just disguised as freedom. Thank you for listening. If my story reached your heart, like this video, share it, and tell me where in the world you're hearing my story of freedom from.